Planning, managing and producing vocational study assignments. Final lecture in this series. Let's run through the different methods of the organisation of information. Aiming to make several drafts of a piece of written work is an effective technique in the preparation of it. I've covered how mind maps work, but a great free mind maps software program is M8. For a very small amount extra, you can get the mind maps in various colours, and this program is really simple to use. You can be up and running in moments. You can make a list. I think everybody knows what that is. Précis, that's a concise summary of text. It can be tricky to produce a précis because you have to take sentences and find single words with which to act as the description. An abstract is similar to a précis, but specifically it is a summary of an academic journal article, which is typically a couple of hundred words. And no matter how long the published work is, the abstract will still only be a set number of words. It must summarise all sections of the article: the introduction, the methodology, the results, discussion, future studies, and this is so that researchers can get the main points without having to read the full article to check whether or not they need to go to the full article. Information can be arranged into bullet points, such as is the norm for verbal PowerPoint presentations. Again, very concise and acting as memory prompts for the presenter in the main. Written work can be a summary, or in other words, a précis. It can represent an analysis of a scientific finding or protocol. Think about training methods and how we can analyse those by comparing and contrasting. We can have academic discussions. The norm for these is that they are respectful, professional, and represent academic argument. And they should not be personal or rude or hurtful. It's totally acceptable to disagree, but at the same time accept that there are differences of opinion. An essay, this is a structured argument or viewpoint of the author, frequently a justification of the author's own viewpoint. It has an introduction stating or opening the argument and which relates to the main content of the essay, and a body, which is the main part, possibly a summary, and then a conclusion at the end. And you might consider that a well-written blog post is constructed in essay form, and many newspapers contain essays in the weekend editions when we have time to read them, so they think. A thesis or dissertation represents a piece of research that is presented for marking at the end of a course. It has a set number of words ranging from 5,000 for a bachelor's degree, which is the honours component of a classified degree, to up to 100,000 for a PhD or doctorate. It has one or more hypotheses or topics that are under investigation. An unbiased view must be put forward so that the researcher must demonstrate that they are keeping an open mind until the results of their experiment or investigation are known to them. It has a conventional format so that a proportion of the marks for the thesis are awarded for the way it is written, not just the content. It's a mix of peer-reviewed information or scientific opinion of others, and there should be more review of work than actual opinion of it, depending on the level that it's being written at. Any argument should be academic, and the work of others should not be verbally trashed or ridiculed, nor should the author, but politely dismissed, because you never quite know if a well-designed but suspect study could in the future be hallowed as a great early piece of investigation, similar to much of Freud's work was rejected in his lifetime, but which is now proving to be the foundation of modern counselling. So it does have value. Sometimes people research and investigate and get results which are ahead of their time. It's a justification of the hypothesis so that all of the content is relevant and points to the hypothesis. A thesis or dissertation is a highly formal piece of writing that leads to formal academic credit on many levels. Information can be organised into tables or charts, and these represent a visual, concise means of stating facts clearly. Numerical information, such as results, are best set out as a table or a chart. Images. A picture really does represent 1,000 words, but the art of a good image is that it makes an unambiguous point for the author. Images are memorable. Diagrams can explain much about the point the writer is putting across, often needed where words can be cumbersome as an explanation. Textbooks are academically informative, justified, and reliable sources of information, or should be. They have clarity, they represent a source of knowledge, and they contain quality information which is written formally. Peer-reviewed journals contain scientific studies, and their remit is to present investigations that advance academic knowledge for agreement. The information is scrutinised for reliability, and results of scientific study are expected to evolve over time. PowerPoints, obviously that's what this presentation is. A central topic or theme is organised into a slideshow, and there is usually some engagement with the audience if the presenter is interesting enough, and their content too. And handouts can be generated from a PowerPoint presentation, and typically they are a form of learning material that supports and is related to an educational or informative presentation. An oral presentation needs no explanation, except that if it might be a student assessment. They are timed, and marks are given for content and how that content was organised and put across. A practical presentation is a demonstration of learning material. Verbal advice. It usually means that there is a decision to be made and it's under discussion. It may be professional or lay, that is, you might have a professional dialogue to help with decision making, or you may confide in a friend for what they might do in your situation. It's debatable how factual they can be, since advice is based on experience and individual perspectives. It's important that advice is clear so that the person implementing it does so as was intended. And the giver of advice is usually keen to check understanding, particularly if that is professional advice being given. Questions and answers in an exam situation which are written. They have great relevance, or the answers do, to the set question, so that the answers are concise, but the question has to be concise and formulated so that it's unambiguously understood. And there is usually, for each answer, there is a point or a mark, so that if a question carries 6 marks, then 6 separate answers are required. Multiple choice questions and answers, they are sometimes considered rather generous, as the student has a chance of not knowing an answer but still receiving a correct mark for not knowing, which may be by chance. They involve a process of consideration and deduction, but they do not test understanding. Information can be instructional, and compliance can depend on how that information is explained and also at what point in time it's needed. Think of a client that you may be expecting to engage in your exercise prescription programs. It can take the form of a comprehensive manual. It could be a case study, which is concise, and they almost read like a news report and with similar formality. They contain details that are relevant to an individual's condition or treatment, and they form the basis of showcasing the author's observation and skills. They should be easy to read and have no grammatical errors, but some use of notes or bullet points is acceptable, so take care when you're writing them. Reports, they're similar, and they can include photographs for brevity and illustration. Web pages can purport to contain academic information, but take care which sites you visit, as many can be clickbait to take your attention away towards a site that the author gets paid to introduce you to. And be careful about reading on mobile devices. They automatically select information to make it possible to read on a small screen, so information can be incomplete. Reflective writing. This is relatively new to the academic sphere. It is an effective method of memory recall. They are highly personal and individualized. They can be highly creative, waffle. They can read as an emotional story, and it takes an effort to get in the flow unless notes have been taken as the learning has been taking place. It takes practice to develop a style of writing for this technique. And it can be frustrating for students who are used to traditional academic writing techniques and modalities. Painfully so for some. It describes how the topic was learned, not necessarily what was learned. And there is a degree of unconscious competence at play here, as it can be highly challenging to recall how you learn something, but a lot of it is how you felt about learning. It can reveal competence levels, high or low, and impact on the impression given to the reader, so be careful. If you reveal too much about struggling with your academic work, it can be rather revealing, but in a negative way. I know I used to feel a bit creepy with this technique at first. To summarise, planning is essential for progress and successful task completion. The more detailed a personal action plan, the easier the task when it's done in small, manageable steps. Academic information can be presented in a wide variety of ways, depending on the recipient of that information or how it's going to be received. Reflective recall of a learning experience is challenging, but greatly improves memory retention and recall of the original topic. In the next presentation, we will explore exam revision strategies.